Yeah, if everybody can mute as well. Hello. Welcome to the final episode of Season 1 of Boudica, Flame of the Iceni. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for following along. If you have been from the beginning or if you joined partway through and you went back and watched all through, thank you for that. Yeah, tonight, again, it's a bit of a feature-length kind of episode again, so yeah, make sure you've got a drink, settle in, and I'm going to pass over to Jane, and we'll just introduce everybody first of all, and then we'll kick off. Thank you. Yeah, so Jane, if you want to start for us by introducing yourself, that'd be amazing.
Hi, my name's Jane, and I play Boudica, and I'd like to hand over to Em.
Hi, my name's Emma. I'm narrating this evening and I'm playing her, and I would like to hand over to Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky. I'm reading for Bramwin this evening, and I'd like to hand over to Curtis.
Hi, I'm Curtis, and I'll be playing Decarius tonight, and I will hand you over to Elric.
Hello, I'm Elric. I'm one of the narrators this evening. I'm also playing Agro, and I will hand you over to Kylie.
Hello, I'm Kylie, and I will be playing the role of Tairo this evening, and I would like to hand you over to Charlotte.
Hi, I'm Charlotte, and tonight I'm going to be playing Sabina and Jacomus, and I'd like to pass you over to Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'll be playing Davon, Terada, Finn, and the boy, and I would like to pass you over to Mike, I think.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm going to be playing Jodac and Adminios this evening, and I'm going to pass you over to Alice.
Cool. Hi, I'm Alice, and I will be narrating and playing Merla this evening, and I will pass you back to Laura.
Thank you. We got really smooth at that now. That's
I know,
really
right?
Good. Yeah, I'm Laura. I'm going to be playing Aeronwen this evening, and yes, we will make a start. I believe is it Em who's up first?
Yeah.
Narrating. So yeah, thank you, Em. Take it away.
Boudica, Flame of the Iceni, Episode 8, Consequences, by Laura J. Harris.
Previously.
Recap of the action during previous episodes, including scenes from the siege, war, and destruction.
Rallying the townsfolk.
More destruction as the main gate is breached.
Rufus makes a stand at the Temple of Claudius.
Aeronwen smashes a male warrior's face into the ground before handing a knife to a Roman woman and advising her to take her own life.
Decarius is knocked unconscious by Finn.
Branwen wakes. She sees all that has been and all that is to come.
To save her, Aeronwen claims Sabina as her slave, and Dilico rejects this, and the pair begin to fight.
Outside Decianus' house, Dulcus suggests that Mutas find Agro.
Aeronwen kills Dilico. Agro arrives and is horrified.
Aeronwen, what have you done?
Jodac speaks to Sabina, who weeps to see his hands, knowing the terrible rumours of Catus's conduct in Icenium to be true.
Boudica calls for Aeronwen. She tells her that all must prepare to face the council and their judgment alone.
It will not be able to speak on your behalf or protect you from their judgment.
Snap to black. Titles. Boudica, Flame of the Iceni. Episode Consequences. Snap out, fade in.
Interior, Aeronwen's tent, morning. Darkness as Aeronwen sleeps. Aeronwen's eyes fly open. Aeronwen's POV. Sabina is above her, her face close to Aeronwen's. The look Sabina currently wears is caught between determination and terror. Aeronwen does not blink. She remains very still. When she does eventually speak, her voice is neither harsh or commanding. It is absent of all bravado.
Go on. Do it.
Angle off. Now see that Sabina is sat over Aeronwen. She presses a sharp blade against Aeronwen's throat. It is the dagger that Aeronwen left her with the previous night. Moving the blade to lift Aeronwen's chin, Sabina brings her free hands to close around Aeronwen's exposed throat. keeping the pressure on the blade.
Do not speak.
Aeronwen swallows and gives a minute a minute nod of her head. Sabina does her best to control the shaking in her voice.
You would have killed him. Yes? You said as much. And you left me with this. Why? In the hopes that I would take my life. Why save me at all?
I gave you a choice.
Sabina's grip tightens around Aeronwen's throat. She presses the blade as she continues to speak. Aeronwen tries not to move, even as a bead of blood runs free from the blade point as it begins to pierce her flesh. Her eyes widen, yet somehow she continues to hold Sabina's gaze.
Stop talking. I am trying to find a reason not to kill you. He wasn't there. He wasn't there because he left me. Because he left me behind. I was an afterthought. He left me. He just left me.
Sabina begins to falter, loosening her grip on Aeronwen's throat and the dagger. Aeronwen remains still, even as Sabina begins to collapse down towards her. Though looser in Sabina's grip, the dagger is still tucked murderously beneath Aeronwen's chin. Sabina continues to collapse down and down, seemingly unable to stop herself. She comes to a stop, her head resting against Aeronwen's shoulder, though she appears to have forgotten that Aeronwen is even there. Sabina's energy leaves her as the reality of the situation seems to hit home for the first time.
Why didn't he come back for me? Why wasn't I worth saving?
Sabina slumps onto the bed, next to Aeronwen, still clutching the dagger. Her arm now rests idle, but heavy still, across the young Iceni queen. After several moments of listening to Sabina breathe, hearing the slight sob catch in her throat, Aeronwen slides her body from underneath the leaden arm. Carefully, holding the hand that clutches the dagger away from her, Aeronwen disentangles her limbs from Sabina's and climbs out of her bed. She does not take the knife from her. Aeronwen moves forward to the mouth of the tent, grabbing a large folded piece of cloth as she goes.
I'm going to wash. I'll bring you back some water.
Aeronwen takes another step towards the door and then stops once more. She looks back towards Sabina, who has not moved. She turns and exits the tent. Angle on Sabina. She remains as she was, silent tears now spilling from her eyes. Cut 2.
Exterior of the infirmary tent, morning. Still bound but no longer gagged, Decarius shivers in his cage. He tries to stretch out, but he has little room. Finn passes close to his cage, a plate of food and a beaker of water. He places both on a barrel just out of Decarius' reach.
Sir,
Does Aeronwen know I'm here?
not even a fucking thank you.
Does she?
How the fuck should I know?
You've not spoken with her then?
I think she's been a little busy.
Speaking with people that matter.
Finn steps dangerously close to the cage, glowering at Decarius.
You're lucky I swore I wouldn't kill you. Today.
Finn turns away from the cage, knocking both the plate and the beaker onto the floor as he passes them. Decarius watches him go, before slamming his palms against the bars of the cage in frustration. Cut 2.
Exterior, the camp, morning. Boudica and Jodac walk together through the camp. A group of children come close to them, caught in their game of warriors. The smallest of their number, a young Iceni boy of about 4 years old, Davon, bumps into Boudica. He looks up at her, his smile fading as soon as he recognises her. He falls to his knee, bowing his head. The other children are swift to follow.
Queen Boudica, apologies,
No need for apologies, young man. You were busy defending our people, I think.
Davon looks up and a smile breaks through his young face.
We were, Great Queen.
And who are you fighting?
The Roman invaders. I wanted to be King Antedios and lead the charge against Governor Scapula, but they said I was too slow to be Antedios.
Boudica and Jodac regard the group of friends, who all squirm, silently willing Davon to stop speaking.
So, who are you instead?
I am your husband. I am King Prasutagus. I make peace with the Romans.
Davon's companions cringe visibly, awaiting Boudica's response. Boudica draws in a long breath, raising her eyebrow. After another moment, she makes a sweeping bow to Davon and kneels before him, smiling.
Husband, of course. Did you really think I would not know you?
She offers her hand to Davon, who swells with pride, returning her smile. He takes hold of Boudica's hand with a newfound confidence. The other children dare not move. In fact, they barely breathe.
The peace you bought with the Romans.
The smile disappears from Davon's face once more as he anticipates a scolding.
Was a good thing while it lasted. And you know better than most that not all heroes fight with sword and with spear.
I fought with my words, didn't I?
Boudica has been drawn into the game and, despite herself, her emotions now threaten to break through her exterior shell.
You did, my love. You did.
A long silence engulfs them.
Was it the right choice?
You did what you thought was right at the time, for our people and our family, and that is all that any of us can hope to do.
Caught up in his game, Davon bows his head, kissing Boudica's hand. She watches him, wanting to pull him into a protective embrace. She resists, but when Davon looks back up at her, there are tears in Boudica's eyes.
Can I tell you something? In our game, King Prasutagus lives.
He does?
Jodac steps in close to Boudica, offering his silent support.
Yes. And we banish all invaders from our lands.
I like the sound of your game.
Go on now, Davon. King Prasutagus. Your people are eager to hear your words and follow your commands.
Davon nods. With a final smile at Boudica, he releases her hand and runs off ahead of his friends, who are now very quick to follow. Boudica rises to stand next to Jodac once more, watching the children run off. She wipes a stray tear away and begins to walk. Jodac falls in next to her.
The council will summon Aeronwen to speak this afternoon. They will hear the testimony of others first. Others, before their queen.
Perhaps it is better this way.
How can it be better?
If her testimony is the last they hear, it will be the foremost in their memory.
After they have already made up their minds regarding her actions. Her choices.
She chose the path she thought was right.
A luxury reserved for the games of children, Jodac.
Your Grace.
This is war. The sooner Aeronwen realizes that, the better.
Forgive me, Mother, but I think she already knows.
Unseen by either Jodac or her mother, Branwen now stands close by. Both turn as one.
Branwen?
I understand her decision. She still feels... She is still living that night. In Camelodunum, she needed to save someone.
There is only a moment of silence.
Why? Why not save a dog or a horse instead? Why a Roman? Why her, of all people?
Only the gods can say.
Queen Branwen, perhaps...
She fought for me, you know.
I know.
I know.
Fought fearlessly.
No, not yesterday.
No. We understand.
No, I don't think that you do. She's still fighting them.
Branwen indicates to her heart.
In here.
She pauses, then places her finger to her temple.
And in here.
Eventually, Boudica nods and smiles at Branwen. After another moment, Branwen moves off in the direction of the main gate to Camelodunum. Jodac reaches out after her and then stops himself, looking back to Boudica.
Should I stop her?
I don't think you could, even if you tried. Something has changed in her, Jodac. Fear my daughters will never be the same again. But I will not lose them. Either of them.
Cut to
Exterior, the infirmary tent, mid-morning. Merla, flanked by 2 novices, approaches the infirmary tent with fresh medicinal herbs, water, and other supplies. As she passes, she happens to look over at a cage tucked in behind several barrels. She pauses in her tracks, realizing that there is a person inside, someone she seems to recognize. She hands everything but the small jug of water over to the novices.
Take this into Thusnelda.
She approaches the cage and is horrified to discover that the person inside the cage is, as she thought, Decarius.
Decarius?
He raises his head, opening his eyes.
What are you doing here?
Decarius eyes the jug.
Is that water?
Merla nods, kneeling and holding up the jug to his mouth. Decarius struggles to drink through the bars.
Thank you.
Why are you in a cage?
Or choice of friends.
Does Aeronwen know you are here?
I don't think so.
Who has the key?
I'm assuming Tairo.
Tairo.
Decarius nods.
Wait here.
Merla stands and strides off, leaving the jug and the irony of her own statement behind her.
Funny.
Decarius struggles to pick up the jug and once more tries and waits to hatch. Cut to.
Interior, the bathhouse, Camalodenum, mid-morning. Alone in the largest pool of the public bathhouse, Aeronwen swims 1 length, then 2. Her clothes are folded on the bench next to her towel. Branwen enters the bathhouse, but remains unseen by Aeronwen, who ducks her head under the water. She remains under the water for the longest time, until we begin to wonder whether she will ever resurface. When eventually she does, she sucks in breath after breath, not noticing Branwen, who is now sat on a bench next to her sister's clothes.
Do you not think this is a little inappropriate?
Fuck! Shit! Branwen! Oh, what are you doing here? How did you even get in?
I told your spear bearer that I wanted to speak to my sister.
He's not my spear bearer. What is it with people assuming
He
that...
might as well be. He cares about you. And he's good at it.
At what? Caring about me or being my spear bearer?
Both.
A heavy silence falls between the pair.
Do you want to get in? It's warm.
Branwen shakes her head.
Because you think it's inappropriate?
No. Because of all the Romans who will have sweated and pissed in it.
God, no. Oh.
Aeronwen reacts with the appropriate level of disgust, hauling herself up out of the pool and crossing the tiled floor to join Branwen, who simply laughs and hands her the towel. For a moment, they are just 2 sisters once more.
That's a horrible thought. Why would you say that?
Aeronwen dries her body and hair, then wraps the towel around herself. Branwen smiles to herself, taking in the baths.
It is nice in here. Shame we never visited before this.
We would never have been allowed in. Men only.
Romans.
Branwen's smile deepens, and she closes her eyes and rests her head against the wall.
Ever the rebel.
Aeronwen laughs and takes a seat next to her sister.
I know what you mean, though.
Aeronwen stares ahead at the water. Both sit quiet for several moments.
There are still people in the temple, you know.
Aeronwen leans forward.
I know.
The mention of the temple instantly shatters the fragile harmony they had reclaimed. Aeronwen picks up her clothes and starts to dress, pulling on her trousers and shirt. Silence.
What will happen to them?
Grabbing the last of her clothes and stepping into her boots, Aeronwen makes her way around the pool toward the exit.
What will happen, Air?
Still moving away, Aeronwen calls back over her shoulder.
I can't save everyone, Bran.
Have you tried?
This stops Aeronwen in her tracks. She is lost for words. She opens her mouth to speak, tears welling in her eyes, but no sound emerges. After a moment, she closes her mouth again, her jaw working in frustration.
That's not fair. Come with me.
As they leave, Aeronwen picks up a medium-sized amphora resting near the exit. Cut to.
Exterior, the infirmary tent mid-morning. Merla moves into frame. Tairo follows behind her, trying to explain his decisions and actions regarding the still-caged Decarius.
Thought it was the best idea at the time. We were in the copse opposite the main gate and...
The pair stop before the cage. Merla gives him a determined look and Tairo fumbles to find the key for the lock.
We couldn't risk him giving away our position before time. Besides, that's what he gets for knocking me out that night in the storehouse.
As the lock clicks open, Tairo seems to realise what he has just said and to whom he has said it. He turns to Merla, his face full of apprehension and apology. She stares at him pointedly, folding her arms across her chest. Decarius lifts the lid of the cage and stands slowly, stretching out as he does.
Do you really want to discuss appropriate comeuppance for what happened that night in the storehouse?
Tairo shakes his head in further apology and turns back to Decarius just in time to receive a solid punch in the face that will leave him with a nice black eye. He stumbles back slightly, then regains his footing.
Be grateful I chose not to break your nose.
Holding his face, he does not even look back at Decarius, but instead addresses Merla.
Will there be anything else, Prince Merla?
Merla takes her time, seeming to consider her answer.
No, that will be all.
The dint to his pride that Decarius' punch may have caused is nothing compared to the shame that Tairo now feels regarding his former actions, his former self. He bows to Merla and leaves, still not looking back at Decarius. Merla offers Decarius her hand and he takes it, steadying himself as he steps out of the cage.
Things have changed.
They certainly have. Let's get you some clean clothes and, well, a bath wouldn't go amiss, if I'm honest.
Honesty is always appreciated, however brutal. Though, not as much as food would be right now.
Merla laughs and they begin to walk together. As they reach out the entrance to the infirmary tent, Jodac steps out ahead of them. He turns and sees Merla bowing his head immediately before he realises that it is Decarius standing next to her. A confused smile breaks across his face, and Jodac opens up as though he would embrace Decarius.
Decarius, what are you...
I still have nothing to say to you, Flamekeeper.
This response stops Jodac in his tracks. His hands fall behind his back as he bobs another brief bow.
No. Of course.
Jodac turns and walks away from the pair, his shoulders a little slumped.
Decarius,
He is the reason my father died in my arms.
The pair begin to walk in silence.
Do you truly believe that?
He did nothing to save him, or to alter anything of the path revealed to him in the flames.
That is not his duty.
Duty.
Your father was not the first casualty, and he will not be the last. There have already been many more since the passing of Melo and Prasutagus, including Jodac.
What do you mean? Merla, what actually happened after I left?
Cut to...
Exterior, Aeronwen's compound, noon. 2 Iceni warriors stand guard at the entrance to Aeronwen's compound. They salute and bow their heads as Aeronwen and Branwen approach. Agro trails 4 steps behind them, carrying the amphora and keeping an eye out for any trouble. Aeronwen nods to the warriors as they pass through the entrance. She takes the amphora from Agro and is about to dismiss him when Branwen addresses him first.
Agro, will you wait out here for us?
Agro looks from Branwen to Aeronwen and back again before answering.
Yes, Your Grace. Of course.
Aeronwen indicates to a table and bench standing in the corner of the compound.
You can take a seat, if you wish.
Thank you, Your Grace.
Agro, you don't need to... Never mind.
Aeronwen and Branwen approach the tent and step inside. Follow to the interior of Aeronwen's tent continuous. Inside, the tent is as it was earlier. Sabina does not appear to have moved and is still sleeping on Aeronwen's bed. She is still clutching the dagger. The dried tracks of her tears have cut through the dirt on her face. Still holding the amphora, Aeronwen indicates to Sabina. Branwen regards Sabina for a moment and then turns her focus to Aeronwen. Both speak in hushed tones.
This is what you wanted to show me? Your new slave?
Bran, you know she's not my slave. I just...
Yesterday she was not your guest. You must decide what she is, heir. And soon.
Aeronwen stares at her sister, momentarily lost for words. Sabina begins to stir. She sits up immediately on guard. She sees the sisters watching her.
Branwen?
Sabina Lupa.
You have changed.
Branwen continues to smile, though now it is tinged with sadness.
I believe we all have changed.
Aeronwen steps forward to say something. As she does, Agro's voice carries into the tent from outside.
Aeronwen, they are calling for you.
Aeronwen looks to Branwen and draws in a breath.
Calling for you?
I will be with you.
Who is calling? Your barbarian horde?
Sabina moves to sit at the end of the bed.
Do they want to congratulate you for leading them so valiantly against a town of men too old to pick up a scutum and boys too young to join the legions? Will they halloo your name for slaughtering a host of mothers and daughters and crones?
This is too much. Slinging the amphora at Branwen, Aeronwen steps forward, ready to slap Sabina across the face. Sabina instinctively brings the dagger up to defend herself. It slices through Aeronwen's forearm, halting her for only a moment. She curses and efficiently disarms Sabina, twisting her arm with one hand, while the other presses her into the furs at the end of the bed. Branwen calls after her sister to stop, even as Agro enters the tent, ready to protect his queen. As Sabina releases her grip on the dagger, Aeronwen releases her grip on Sabina.
Stop this.
Aeronwen.
It's fine. It's fine.
Taking up the dagger, Aeronwen regards her arm, then offers the dagger to Branwen, who refuses to take it.
No.
Branwen, take the dagger. She might try...
Sabina sits up once more, nursing her arm.
Might what? You think I would hurt her? A child?
Child or not, I know the violence your lot are capable of. Believe me.
Aeronwen holds up her bleeding arm as if to drive the point home. Sabina indicates her own shoulder.
A strange sentiment to impart to your prisoner.
Aeronwen stares at Sabina for a long moment before shaking her head.
This was a mistake.
Taking the dagger with her, Aeronwen turns to Agro.
Let's go.
Agro nods and holds the tent flap open for Aeronwen to exit. He glares at Sabina, then bobs a bow of his head to Branwen before following Aeronwen outside. Sabina shakes her head. After a moment.
She isn't going to bask in the adoration of a people. And I think you know that.
I don't care where she's going or what she does.
Perhaps you do not.
A heavy silence passes between them. Sabina seems to notice the amphora for the first time.
What is that?
Water?
Branwen offers it to Sabina, who holds out her hands to receive the amphora. She regards it for a moment before pulling off the stopper and dipping her fingers inside.
It's warm.
Branwen nods. Several moments pass.
Is it true? Jodac told me a little of what happened.
Silence. Branwen's hand moves instinctively towards her belly, and it seems for a long time that she will not speak at all. Then she blinks and returns to the conversation as if there were no break at all.
They made her fight them first. Did you know that?
Fight them?
For sport. For fun. Because they could.
Sabina shakes her head but remains silent.
She fought for me. As I believe she fought for you.
I didn't ask her to fight for me.
Neither did I. But that is beside the point. Now she stands alone. No one can fight for her in this arena.
What do you mean?
While saving you, she slew a noble of the Cadwallader tribe.
Andilico.
Branwen nods.
In doing so, she has lost the trust of the clan elders and must face the judgment of her war council alone.
But she is their queen, isn't she?
She is. They all swore that they would fight for her. But she swore that she'd lead them against Rome, not cut down our allies to save a citizen of our enemies.
Sabina quietly considers Branwen's words, but soon enough her Roman sense of veritas and self-aggrandizing pomposity get the better of her.
She should learn to pause and give due consideration to future consequences prior to committing herself to such action.
You've met my sister, yes?
Aeronwen's smile falters and eventually fades. She stands and moves toward the exit.
Are you leaving me?
For now.
That said, Aeronwen exits the tent.
Wonderful.
Sabina removes the stopper from the amphora once more. She dips her fingers inside the jar, soaking them in the water before bringing her hand to her face, feeling the warmth of the water on her skin. Cut to.
Exterior, the camp, near Merla's tent, noon. Decarius exits Merla's tent. Merla follows him out to the daylight. He shakes his head and kicks at the dirt on the ground.
How could he do that?
Once Decianus lost control, it was no way of regaining that control.
I should never have left.
Do you think it would have made a difference had you stayed? What could you have done?
I could have spoken to him.
You were exactly where you were supposed to be. Where the gods wanted you to be.
Oh, don't.
What?
Speak to me of the gods. The gods and their plans. I've heard enough of them. Not all my life, our gods, their gods, the gods of Rome, of the Iceni. And what good have they done? What good can ever come from placing your faith in them? They are cruel if they're even out there, if they are listening to us at all.
Merla steps in close to Decarius and kisses his cheek. She pauses there for a long moment before pulling back, holding on to his hands. Decarius is surprised but says nothing. When Merla speaks again, there is a sad quality to her voice that was not there before.
They have certainly tested you, son of Malo.
Decarius opens his mouth to speak, then changes his mind and simply nods. He squeezes Merla's hands, thanking her silently. Looking out into the camp, Decarius spies Jodac at a distance. Merla follows his gaze.
Will you speak with him now?
Decarius nods once more and picks up a wineskin that is hanging on the lintel. He questions Merla with a look and she nods her approval. Merla watches as Decarius heads out to intercept Jodac before noticing a letter on the ground. She picks it up. It is addressed to Decarius. The seal has been broken, but it is still meticulously folded. Merla moves out to call after Decarius, then hesitates. With the letter still in her hand, she returns to her tent. Cut to.
Exterior, the camp, continuous. Decarius soon catches up to Jodac. Hearing him before he sees him, Jodac turns. He does not know quite what to expect. Unslinging the wineskin from his shoulder, Decarius offers it to Jodac. The Flamekeeper remains stock still.
I was wrong. The things I said in Icenium and the way I...
Jodac raises his hand gently to silence Decarius, who, seeing the awful injuries there, cannot help but stare. He takes Jodac's hand gently in his own, looking it over, anguish painted across his face. Decarius looks over Jodac's other hand, horrified.
Those days are done.
Jodac leads Decarius towards his camp area. There are stools set up outside tent. A fire is already burning there, and Jodac indicates for Decarius to sit before it. He does.
It is the present and the future which concern us now.
Although he speaks with confidence, Jodac seems apprehensive, even afraid, of looking into the flames before him. Cut 2.
Exterior, the great tent of War Council, afternoon. Aeronwen and Agro approach the council tent, which, like Aeronwen's tent, has a ring of staked posts surrounding it, creating an outer compound area with a single entrance. Blood is still streaming down Aeronwen's arm as the pair approach the entrance.
Aeronwen.
Spotting a barrel of water nearby, Agro leads Aeronwen toward it.
What are you...
He cups his hand into the water, using it to wipe the blood from her arm. Untying a strip of red material he usually wears around his wrist, he takes her arm and binds the wound. Aeronwen stares at it. Then at Agro's huge paw of a hand, which still gently holds her arm. Suddenly self-conscious, he releases her.
At least it's red. Should hide the blood.
Aeronwen nods. She turns to face the entrance of the tent and, taking a deep breath, steps inside. Cut 2.
Interior, the great tent of the War Council continuous. Several of the lengths that make up the sides of the tent have been lifted and staked in place to allow light and air to flow inside. Aeronwen takes in the faces of the 20 or so council members sitting around a number of small connecting tables arranged in a semicircular formation. Agro follows close on her heel. Adminios is sat front and centre amongst the council. Boudica is sat off to the side, separate from the other council members. Seeing Aeronwen arrive, Jacomus, seated on the outer edge of the circle, stands and announces her.
Aeronwen, Queen of the Iceni.
Aeronwen's eyes find those of her mother. Boudica nods, silently trying to reassure her daughter. Without standing, Adminios addresses Aeronwen, his sickly smile never faltering.
Ah, your grace! Come in. Come and stand here before the council.
Aeronwen nods, her head held high, and takes up the indicated position in the centre of the floor.
Tarada, perhaps you would like to begin.
As Tarada stands, Aeronwen swallows and risks a brief glance at her mother. Adminios does not miss this, relishing in her discomfort. Cut 2.
Exterior, Aeronwen's tent, afternoon. Risking a glance outside the tent, Sabina takes a quick look around. All appears quiet. There are relatively few people about, considering the great horde that journeyed from Camalodunum. Fewer still pay any attention before their own camp parameters. Sabina steps tentatively out into the compound, into the sunlight that still feels a little too cold for her. Nonetheless, she enjoys the feel of it on her skin in this moment. She looks around her and slowly begins to walk. She walks the length and breadth of Aeronwen's compound, right up to the tall wooden stakes that mark the perimeter of her freedom. The exterior space within Aeronwen's compound is large, but it is no less than a prison and a cage to Sabina. She returns to the compound entrance, considering. She picks up a jug from the table and steps up to the gap in the staked fencing. It is conspicuously absent of guards. Could this be a trap? Clutching the jug before her protectively, Sabina takes one furtive step across the invisible line. She takes another step and finds herself fully beyond the border of the compound. She pauses, looking around her as one expecting to be struck down or apprehended, but nothing happens. Sabina begins to walk, fast. She tries to keep her pace calm and steady, but she is both terrified and exhilarated. The adrenaline coursing through her will not allow her to slow. It is all she can do not to break into a run. Trying her best to keep her gaze down, weaving her way through the tents and makeshift living areas, she makes her way towards Camalodunum. Reaching the outer line of tents, she can now make out the ransacked main gate of the town, some 30 feet ahead of her, but from here on in, there is no cover. She swallows hard, looking around her left and right, psyching herself up to run. Sabina bends to place the jug on the ground, and as she stands once more, we see that Merla is stood behind her.
Don't do it.
Sabina's legs all but buckle under her as she turns to look at Merla.
There are sentries posted at the gate.
Sabina turns back towards the town to find that Merla is correct. Her heart sinks as she watches two groups of men exchanging watch duties.
Sentries? To guard against what?
Looters, for one. All clans were given time to pick through and claim what they wanted after Camalodunum fell. But that time is now past, and all that remains, all that was left behind, is to be dedicated to the gods.
What do you mean?
Merla holds up her hand, shaking her head.
Don't ask. But trust me, you will find nothing inside those walls but death.
Perhaps that is what I want.
Perhaps. But I don't think that is so, Sabina Lupa.
Sabina regards Merla properly for the first time.
How do you know my name?
You mean aside from the fact that you are the only living Roman woman outside of Camalodunum for 70 miles or more? We met when you visited Icenium. You won't remember me, don't try. I served you and your husband with wine on the night that Aeronwen fought Agro in the circles.
Sabina takes in Merla's attire, including the diadem she is wearing, and cannot help but look a little confused.
You served us.
I did.
It is clear that Merla will speak no further on the matter. Sabina takes a look around beyond Merla and realizes that the people have noticed her, but they are doing their best to pay her very little attention.
You are the reason that no one stopped me.
Merla acknowledges this.
And did you start following me?
I watched you leave Aeronwen's compound.
Sabina laughed.
Compound, indeed. Why not call it what it is? A cage.
Feels like a cage to you.
Of course it does.
Because you are used to being a free woman.
I am more than just a free woman. I am a citizen of Rome. A patrician woman of noble blood and lineage and...
Even as she speaks the words, Sabina begins to falter. Merla closes the gap between them, placing her hands gently on Sabina's arms, holding her loosely at a distance.
And you are still all of those things. These things can never be taken from you.
It was not so long ago I thought that way about freedom. Look at me now.
Merla smiles softly.
What is freedom to you, Sabina Lupa? The life you knew is gone, yes, but you are still here, breathing, existing. You must choose how to live and how to thrive in this new life.
How? How do I do that?
Accept your position. Accept your status and your role. Fate has changed all for you. It may change yet again.
Sabina's gaze wanders back towards Camelodunum.
Don't throw your life away.
Caught between Merla's words and her own sense of Roman responsibility, Sabina brings her hands to her eyes. She rubs at her face wearily and sighs.
Where do I begin? I was the mistress of a great house, a matriarch, revered and respected, but now...
You belonged to Decianus.
Catus was my husband.
Now you belong to Aeronwen. It's not so different.
It's a little different, actually.
Of course it is. But was your marriage to Decianus a decision of your own making?
Sabina falls silent for a moment, considering her answer.
I grew to love him. He wanted a son, but I could never give him one. Still, I thought he loved me in return. I thought he might have... Never mind.
Merla bends to pick up the discarded jug. She hands it to Sabina.
That life is gone now. Do not dwell on the past. It will do you no good. And on the bright side, at least Aeronwen won't be expecting you to produce an heir.
Despite herself, Sabina laughs. Merla turns and begins. Sabina falls in step with her.
You will adjust to your new life soon enough, and will find little difference at the end.
Except that previously I had an army of slaves to help me. Here the only army is an actual army of barbarians who hate me. In this life, I am the slave.
It is in your mind alone that you confirm either your bondage or your freedom.
Easy for you to say, princess.
Believe me, I've had some experience with these things. Make yourself useful to her. Make yourself indispensable. I don't think she would hand you over, but...
Hand me over?
Traditionally, captives are awarded to those who have proved themselves most valiantly during the sacking of a city or a town. Or they are claimed by the leaders of their charge, kings and princes, and occasionally queens.
That's what she did. That's what she said. She claimed me.
But during a long campaign, it has been known for masters to release their prizes if they prove to be troublesome or no real use.
Release? Why does that not sound like something positive?
Because prizes are not released to enjoy their freedom, but rather to be enjoyed by their masters' loyal followers and accomplished warriors.
Sabina's face drops as she stops dead in her tracks.
She wouldn't. I know she wouldn't. Would she?
Merla shakes her head.
I do not think so. Her father only ever took one prize in all his years. One woman. A woman he elevated as highly as the bonds of society and the wrath of his wife would allow.
I didn't know Prasutagus well, but of both of her parents, Aeronwen does not seem to be her father's daughter.
Merla shrugs thoughtfully.
Perhaps in this she will be.
The pair continue on their journey.
Who was she? This other woman.
Merla pauses, smiling.
She was an impossible woman. She gave very good advice.
They walk a little further in silence. As they approach Aeronwen's compound, they see Branwen waiting at the entrance, apparently waiting for them to return. Handing her charge over to Branwen, Merlin bobs her head to her sister. Branwen acknowledges her with a smile, and Merla turns to make her way back to her tent.
What was that? What just happened?
I believe that what happened was you narrowly averting the consequences, despite committing yourself to a set of actions without the appropriate level of thought.
Sabina looks as though she has an answer ready, but when she opens her mouth to speak, there are no words. Branwen smiles and extends her arm, allowing Sabina to pass back into the compound and then further still into the tent beyond. Sabina goes without complaint. Cut 2.
Interior, the great tent of the War Council, later. Terida is still standing as she continues to question Aeronwen.
And all those who followed our young queen into the city give a good account of her too. No one could doubt your skill, your grace, or your ferocity in battle, or your leadership and honour in leading the charge through the main gate. These things are indisputable and apparent for all to see.
There are murmurs of agreement among the council, but even as Terida takes her seat,
No, what concerns this council is Queen Aeronwen's inability to distinguish friend from foe during a siege.
the murmurs grow louder. Aeronwen remains still. Boudica shifts uncomfortably in her seat at Havda's outburst. After a moment, Jacomus stands and quiets the council members.
The council calls Agro, son of Melo, to answer questions regarding Queen Aeronwen's conduct in the house of Catus Decianus.
Aeronwen exchanges a look with Agro, who rises from the bench near the entrance.
You may take a seat, Your Grace.
Aeronwen seems distant for a moment.
Queen Aeronwen, perhaps you would like to sit next to your mother for support. She cannot speak on your behalf, but this council is not without feeling. Go, sit with her.
Aeronwen frowns at him, but not knowing what else she should do, follows his instructions, even as Agro moves to take her spot before the council.
Agro, Melo was not your natural father, I believe, and yet he adopted you after your own father fell in battle. And after Melo's own son, his only heir, was traded by your former king to buy peace with the Roman invaders of our lands, yes?
Enraged, Boudica stands.
That is not how it happened.
Queen Boudica, we must ask you to remain silent during these proceedings. I do not wish to see you removed from the hearing, but shall follow procedure to the letter, if I must.
Reluctantly, Boudica takes her seat next to Aeronwen once more.
Please, continue.
The funerary rites for your adopted father followed the recent atrocities in Iceni. Is that right?
Agro nods.
I was sorry to hear of his passing. He was a great warrior and held in high regard by all.
He was, indeed.
A moment of silence falls across the room as all remember Melo.
How did he die?
Realizing where this is leading and that it is a trap against her daughter, Boudica stands, interrupting once more.
What does Melo's death have to do with the siege of Camalodunum?
Queen Boudica, I have warned you once already.
And I am warning you, Adminios. This is not a game you can so easily manipulate.
Game? My nephew is dead, and not by the hand of our enemy, but instead at the hands of your daughter, the elder queen and leader of the Iceni people. the queen for whom we have, all of us, rallied and joined together as one to battle against the people we believe to be held by all as our common enemy. Now, I am not so certain.
You doubt the Iceni commitment to this cause. You doubt our hatred of Rome. You all know the indignities pressed upon my family by Rome.
Mother.
The beasts who stole the virgin rights of my beautiful daughters as I was tied to a stake like an animal and whipped it till I could no longer stand.
Mother.
Do you know what that is like, Adminios? Do you know what it is like to feel so completely helpless? To know that the hands of those soldiers were tearing at the clothes of my girls, pouring at their flesh.
Mother!
While they were inside my daughters without their consent, without their...
Stop!
Aeronwen is on her feet, practically screaming. Her hands over her face for a moment, she draws in breath after breath, trying to calm and slow her racing heart.
None of you can understand what happened that night. Because none of you were there. And the way my sister feels is different to the way I feel. It has changed us, both of us. I wish I could say that it hadn't, but it has. I wish I could be strong enough to say it was nothing, that it does not matter. But that would be a lie, because it does matter. And you weren't there! And you didn't save us!
Heartbroken, Boudica opens her mouth to speak, but Aeronwen holds up her hand.
And that is not your fault. I could not save us either.
That said, Aeronwen marches across the floor past Agro and the council members and directly out of the tent. Adminios looks on, flabbergasted. He is about to object when Terida raises her hand.
Give us some time. I suggest we break for now. Agro, follow your queen.
Agro nods and makes a small, swift bow to Boudica before following after Aeronwen. Cut to.
Exterior, the camp, before Camalodunum, late afternoon. Decarius and Jodac, still talking, approach the main gate to Camalodunum.
Are you sure you want to do this?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Decarius shakes his head.
But I know I must.
The guards on the gates take in Decarius and his uniform, but seeing Jodac with him, they salute and allow the pair to pass into Camalodunum. Even as they take their first few steps into the desolate and decimated town, Decarius's feet struggle to continue moving forward. They press on, however, turning this way and that along several streets until they come to Rufus' bakery. The windows are smashed, the shop looted. Decarius pauses, staring ahead at the ruined building. Following his gaze, Jodac places his hand upon the younger man's shoulder.
Would you like me to wait for you?
Decarius shakes his head once more.
No. No, I will be fine. Thank you, Jodac.
It will not be easy for you.
It never is.
Decarius steps away from Jodac, moving with a slow-footed heaviness towards the bakery. Jodac watches him enter the building before returning along the way they came. Follow to...
Interior, Rufus's bakery, continuous. Decarius picks his way through the shop, unsurprised by, but far from immune to the violent scenes that greet him there. There are 6 or 7 bodies in the main room, mostly women and children of various ages, and 1 old man. The whiff of death is already heavy in the air. In the corner of the room, a mother shields her child with an embrace that will never, ever rise from, murdered as they tried to take cover here. Seeing that none of the bodies belong to Rufus or Apollina, Decarius pushes out a sigh of relief, though he knows the chances of finding his friends alive are slim to none. Decarius can find another living soul inside the building, and soon enough his feet carry him back outside into the afternoon.
Exterior, Camalodunum town continuous. Decarius rounds corner after corner, taking in the desperate scenes of the decimated town. It is quiet, but for the constant cawing of crows that circle overhead and the occasional drifting burst of conversation from clan warriors, patrolling the streets in pairs. These patrols pay little attention to Decarius, whether this is thanks to Jodac he cannot say. Rounding the next corner, Decarius enters the main forum. The square is now littered with bodies, slick with blood and filth. The bodies here are now predominantly those of soldiers, veterans, and boys. For a moment, the stench of the forum overwhelms him. Sights such as this are customary to the battlefield, but not to a town he knows so well. Lost in sorrow, he moves towards the Temple of Claudius, the entrance to which is not currently in view. Focus on the back exterior wall of the Temple of Claudius. Approaching the temple, Decarius pauses for a moment. He could swear he heard voices within the temple. Looking around him, checking that no one is watching, he presses his ear to the stone. The hushed whispers and whimpers are unmistakable. There are people inside. Decarius rushes around to the front of the temple. Follow too.
Exterior, the steps of the Temple of Claudius. Continuous. Decarius rushes towards the entrance, then stops as he is confronted by the mangled sight of a dismembered head nailed to the front door of the temple itself. It takes him only a second to recognize the man's russet hair and to identify the head as belonging to Rufus. Decarius breaks, crying out and crumbling to his knees. He reaches out to touch the eyeless face of the man he so admired. Decarius weeps without care. Moving to find Rufus' body, Decarius takes hold of his friend's hand.
I should never have left. Rufus,
Noticing the lighter-coloured band of skin on his ring finger and realising that someone has also taken Rufus's wedding ring, now enrages Decarius beyond all limits.
Fucking animals! I will find out who did this to you, my friend. And I will kill them. You will have your vengeance, I swear. By the blasted gods of both our people, I swear it.
Wanting to leave a funerary gift with a man who Decarius felt was more like a father to him than his own, he reaches into the leather pouch on his belt and draws out the bracelet that Branwen slipped into his hand the day he left Iceni. It is the bracelet that Prasutagus had previously given to Merla's mother, which Merla said should go with a king. He places the bracelet on Rufus' wrist, bending his head to kiss the hand of his friend before standing once more. Shaking and unsteady, he makes his way towards the temple entrance, but the doors that had clearly been broken in previously have now been pulled back into position and secured with additional timbers and boards. The entrance is completely boarded and sealed, but Decarius is certain he hears voices inside. He begins to shoulder barge the door and immediately hears the responding shrieks of terror from those hiding inside. He steps back, assessing the door, then steps in again, trying his strength against the wood once more.
Hey! Hey! Can you hear me?
As he is about to shout again, Decarius feels something hit the back of his head. He looks at the ground. Rubbing his head, he picks up the stone and then turns to look around him. It takes him a moment, but eventually spies the boy who had delivered the letters to him and Sabina hiding in the shadows across the forum. Decarius opens his mouth to speak, but the boy holds his finger up to his lips and points to an approaching patrol. Decarius remains still, and the boy indicates to a nearby street. Decarius nods and the boy runs off. As the patrol make their way around to the front of the temple, Decarius peels off and heads into a nearby alleyway, without them seeing him. Follow.
Exterior, the back streets of Camelodunum, continuous. Decarius dodges down several streets and eventually emerges and is darkened by the close shadows of the many houses. The boy waits for Decarius at the end of the street.
What are you doing here?
I was in the temple, sir.
Decarius opens his mouth to question him, but the boy speaks first.
Did you know Rufus, sir?
Decarius' surprise in hearing the boy speak Rufus' name is only surpassed by the sudden pang of grief that hits him once more. It's like a physical blow. Decarius nods, unable to speak, and tears fill in the boy's eyes.
Me too.
How did you escape?
We were hiding in the cellar. They couldn't get in. Thought that they were trying. Epolina saw this loose tile and...
Epolina?
Yes, sir. We pulled at it and found a gap. Only small. It led down under the...
Where is she?
She's still inside, sir.
We have to get her out. We have to get them all out.
Ow! It were a squeeze for me.
I don't know. Take me to where you came out.
The boy nods and starts leading Decarius through the desolated streets, whispering as they go.
She kept crying, sir. I held on to her when they... We heard it all, you see. But Rufus was brave. I miss him. And I know she misses him. She's been praying.
The thought of Eppelina actually praying makes Decarius smile, even as he struggles to hold back tears.
For his soul. And for Lady Sabina too.
With good winds, she should be halfway to Gaul by now. 50 miles or more away from this madness.
The boy pauses in his tracks, turning slowly to face Decarius.
You don't know, sir?
Terror and fear are writ clear across Decarius' face as the idea that Sabina may not have left Camalodunum before the siege begin to enter his mind for the first time. Cut 2.
Interior, the house of Catus Decianus minutes later. No one stirs, nothing moves. The tiled floor is awash with the blood and bodies of slaves.
Sabina?
Cut 2.
Exterior, the peristyle gardens, continuous.
Sabina!
Decarius runs into shot, emerging from the shadow of the portico into the garden proper.
Sabina?
After a moment, he spies Stepanides' body and approaches with caution, though he has clearly been dead for at least a day. Decarius takes in the scene, the numerous amphorae, the signs of struggle, and especially the massive pool of blood that is conspicuously absent of body. He kneels down near the pool of blood, stupefied. He cannot bring himself to accept the idea presenting itself, that Sabina could be dead.
I should never have left.
As Decarius begins to crumble, the boy runs into the garden, calling out as he goes.
Sir, you have to come now.
The urgency in the boy's voice has Decarius on his feet before he can think to react in any other way. The boy runs back through the house, Decarius on his tail. Follow through the house.
Exterior, the portico of Catus Decianus' house, continuous. The boy comes to a sudden halt on the steps of the front portico. Decarius almost slams into him, stopping at the last moment. The boy stares out ahead of him towards the forum and the orange hue now engulfing the square.
It's too late, sir. We're too late.
Decarius follows the boy's gaze to see flames erupting from and enveloping the temple of Claudius. Decarius has no words. He feels the boy lean into him and without thought bends to pick him up. The boy covers his ears and buries his face into Decarius' shoulder, trying to hide from the sight and the heat of the flames, trying to block out the sounds of the people who are burning inside the temple. The boy hides his face, but Decarius can no longer turn away. Cut 2.
Exterior, near Aeronwen's compound, late afternoon. Aeronwen storms through the camp, though she knows that Agro is following her close behind. She is angry, frustrated, and emotional. She wants to scream, to cry, to tear down the world, to crawl into her bed and never emerge again. But it seems there is nowhere she can go to be alone and gather her thoughts, to rant, scream, or cry. In a fury of frustration, she rounds on Agro as they reach the entrance of her compound.
Did they tell you to follow me?
It wouldn't matter. I wanted to check on you.
I'm fine.
When you are far from fine.
How dare you?
Noticing the absence of guards at the entrance, Agro holds up his hand to silence her.
Where are your guards?
I don't care about guards.
Aeronwen swipes his hand away and steps inside the boundaries of the compound.
Well, I do, Your Grace. Aeronwen, stop being so fucking stubborn.
Grabbing her by the shoulders, Agro hauls her back beyond the boundary line for her own protection while he looks around.
I don't know whether you noticed, but Adminios had murder in his eyes, and I wouldn't put it past that slimy bastard.
Before he can finish the sentence, Aeronwen drives forward into Agro, knocking him to the ground. Gravity and motion pull her down as she lands on top of him. For a moment, she looks as though she will pummel his face into oblivion, and it seems as though Agro would let her, remaining still and awaiting the inevitable blows. Instead, Aeronwen drives her fist into the ground beside his face. Perched on top of Agro, and barely able to hold her emotions in check, Aeronwen brings the flat of her palms to rest on the ground either side of his head, so that her face is merely inches from his. Frustration burns in Aeronwen's eyes, while despite his anger, Agro's eyes well with sadness, sympathy, and guilt.
I do not need you to save me from Adminios or from anyone.
I am trying to save you from yourself, Your Grace.
Aeronwen releases Agro and moves away from him.
Don't do that. Don't call me Your Grace, like it's some sort of game.
Is that what you think? Is that what you think of me?
Bringing her hands to her face and pausing for a moment, Aeronwen draws in and then releases a breath that sounds very much like a sob. She wipes at her face.
I am no longer the boy that used to play at being a prince, Aeronwen.
I know.
Do you?
Unable to stand still, Aeronwen walks away from him toward the perimeter of the compound. Eventually, she returns to him, her eyes red.
If you wish to save me, and you believe that the greatest threat to my safety is me, then you certainly have your work cut out.
Aeronwen extends her hand to Agro, who accepts it, climbing to his feet.
I do not think you are a boy playing at...
Forget it.
No, Agro, I'm sorry. I never did thank you. And I should have.
Agro smiles a small but warm smile.
You have been a little busy, my queen.
Aeronwen returns the smile, then looks out at the camp beyond the compound.
Did you ever imagine such a sight as this, Agro?
I don't think even Jodac could have foreseen this.
So many people. And more arriving every day.
So many clans and tribes fighting as one.
And I might have destroyed it all before we've even truly begun. And for what?
Aeronwen looks toward her tent, knowing that Sabina is inside.
I am weak, Agro.
No. You have a kind heart.
Staring ahead, Aeronwen considers this.
Do I? Was my heart kind when I used Merla to defer your advances towards me? When I suggested that she would be grateful of such attention?
Aeronwen.
Or when I mocked you that same night?
I deserved it.
No, and did I get what I deserved? Is that what I...
No, Aeronwen. No.
Forgetting himself, Agro takes hold of Aeronwen, wrapping her up in the warmest of embraces. He holds her, and she lets him. He kisses the top of her head as he continues to speak.
Gods, no, that's not what I meant. You did nothing to... No one deserves what they did.
Eventually, Aeronwen releases her grip on Agro.
It was not kindness that drove the blade into Calamenes. When he sought me out, concerned and...
Agro takes a step back from Aeronwen, but keeps hold of her, looking into her face, taking in the lost look in her eyes.
Everything that has happened because of me.
No. I refuse to accept that, Aeronwen. I refuse it. You did not invite Catus Decianus and his brutes to Iceni, nor any other Roman to our shores. You are not responsible for their oppression of our people, for the taxation of our lands, and I do not speak of the Iceni alone. You are not responsible for their obsession with the Druids, any more than you could be responsible for their inherent greed and lust for power.
And why do I feel so very desperately that this is all my fault?
Because you are queen. You wear the mantle of leadership. You carry that responsibility with you.
Aeronwen breaks from Agro. After a moment, she speaks again, almost in a whisper.
I feel for them. I know I shouldn't. But that doesn't make it It doesn't make me feel any less sick to my stomach when I think about it.
They are our enemy.
They were women and children. They were old men, some barely able to pick up a sword.
Every old man in that town was a retired soldier, given a plot of land and a townhouse as his reward from his emperor for cutting our people down year after year, battle after battle. What about the women and children of the Catavalani and the Trinovantes who once inhabited that town, eh? And every woman and girl inside Camelodum was the wife or the daughter of a soldier.
Retired soldier.
Every young boy's head was filled with ideas of empire and conquest, of training and waiting for the day that he might join the legions and join them in slaughtering us. Slaughtering us.
Agro.
Our women, our children, our young boys and our old men, our priests, our kings, and our queens.
What happened in Camelodunum
is still war, Aeronwen.
A heavy silence passes between them, and eventually Aeronwen nods. Agro moves to take up the sentry position at the entrance of the compound, and wants to put some distance, speaking the following words before his nerves can get the better of him.
I would follow you to the ends of the earth, Aeronwen, fiery daughter of Boudica and Prasutagus. I know that you cannot love me, but I need you to know that I will always be there. I failed you in Iceni, but I swear that while I draw breath, no man shall ever do harm to you again. I would give my life for yours, and I count myself blessed to do so.
Aeronwen doesn't know quite how to respond to this. Swallowing, she gives a single nod of her head before turning toward her tent. Agro takes up his position at the entrance to the compound. Cut to.
Interior, Aeronwen's tent, late afternoon, continuous. Stepping inside the tent, Aeronwen is surprised to find Sabina and Branwen sat together at her table, playing a board game with the small stone pieces. She is about to speak when she notices something very different about the tent. It has been tidied and organised in such a degree as Aeronwen has never known. To Aeronwen's further confusion, a bronze bowl of water now stands on a pedestal near the entrance to the tent. She approaches it. Sabina takes her move and then turns to Aeronwen.
It's rose water to wash your face and hands after the day. And there is food here and drink.
Branwen watches Sabina and Aeronwen, then takes her move, capturing one of Sabina's pieces.
You both did this.
Branwen nods to Sabina.
It was all Sabina.
Aeronwen takes several steps further into the tent, taking in the tidy order of it.
You even made it smell better. How did you do that?
A lifetime of looking after my brothers, my father, and then my husband.
Aeronwen turns to face Sabina.
Why?
Because you fought for me. And you didn't have to. And despite everything, you have treated me as your guest rather than anything else.
All can see how difficult this is for Sabina. Her calm and honesty is almost too much for Aeronwen to take, her mind racing, flooding with images of all the innocents she could not save. Turning from the pair at the game, she spies a fresh loaf of bread. She picks it up, squeezing it just a little. She brings it close to her face and inhales the scent of it.
Where did you get this?
I traded a necklace for it.
But it was from...
Yes.
With tears blurring her vision, Aeronwen spots a number of small cakes. She picks one up and once more inhales.
And what about these? Where did they come from?
Sabina looks to Aeronwen, holding her gaze despite the tears in her own eyes.
They came from the finest bakery in Camelodunum. I would know them anywhere.
A single tear traces its way across Sabina's cheek as Aeronwen replaces the cake, and Agro calls her from outside.
Your Grace, you need to see this.
As Aeronwen wipes her face and exits the tent, Branwen and Sabina exchange looks even as Branwen takes her move. Sabina follows, moving her piece to win the game.
Well done, Lady Sabina. The game is yours.
Sabina holds the stone piece and regards it, speaking sadly and without irony.
Is winning supposed to feel this hollow?
Cut 2.
Exterior Aeronwen's compound continuous. Aeronwen joins Agro, who indicates to the fallen town where the massive plume of flames and are now blazing higher than the walls.
Is that the temple?
Agro nods. They both know what this means. The temple will not have been evacuated in advance.
Go ahead of me. Reconvene the council. I would address them immediately.
Agro nods his assent once more and moves off toward the great tent of the War Council. Cut 2.
Exterior near the council tent minutes later. Aeronwen approaches, trying to gather her thoughts, preparing herself to face the council. Though she does not immediately see him, Decarius, returning from Camelodunum and still holding onto the boy, has spotted her. With an almost feline fluidity, he places the boy on the ground and runs at Aeronwen. Launching himself at her, Decarius brings Aeronwen to the ground, his hands instantly around her throat. Decarius begins to squeeze the life out of her. He is like a man possessed, wild and unstoppable.
They were innocent! They were innocent!
A cry goes up, and the 2 sentries at the compound come racing over. They try to pull Decarius off Aeronwen, but he is determined and fights each of them off, returning to throttle Aeronwen even as they continue to try and remove him. We hear Agro's voice, but do not immediately see him.
Decarius!
Decarius turns to find Agro with a blade to the boy's throat.
Unhand her now.
Decarius looks back at Aeronwen one final time before releasing his grip on her. He stands, holding up his hands, and turns to face Agro.
Go.
Kill him.
No!
From behind them, near the entrance to the compound, we hear Boudica's voice.
Kill them both.
The sentries take hold of Decarius and appear more than prepared to carry out this order. Holding the boy, Agro waits.
I said no! Release them!
Boudica shoots a look at Aeronwen, but does not object.
Release me at your peril, Aeronwen. Everyone I know, everyone I love is dead because of you.
Decarius!
Sabina was innocent. This boy is innocent. And every single person that roasted inside the Temple of Claudius was innocent.
Horrified, Aeronwen looks to Boudica, who raises her head high.
Their deaths are on you, Aeronwen. Pray their souls find yours in the afterlife and tear you limb from limb.
Inside, Aeronwen is distraught. Outwardly, she stands a little straighter, but is no less stricken. Her voice is distant when she speaks.
A queen must be everything for her people. Bring them inside.
Boudica looks a little confused, but does not question her daughter's decree, as the council members, guards, and all the other spectators return to the tent. Agro approaches Decarius, handing the boy back to him and escorting them both towards the compound. The sentries look concerned at the idea of letting Decarius and the boy inside. Aeronwen glares at them.
Step aside. They are under the charge of this man, my spear bearer. The only man I would trust with my life.
Agro keeps his surprise and delight in check. Just. He looks to Aeronwen, bringing his arm across his chest in a swift salute. Aeronwen nods and enters the tent.
What's going on?
You want to know what happened to that Roman mistress of yours?
Not knowing what to make of Agro's words and having little choice besides, Decarius takes the boy's hand, and together they move into the tent. Cut 2.
Interior, the Great War Tent, continuous. The original higher-ranking council members, including Terida, Jacomus, and Adminios, have all joined by many more besides, forming quite a crowd. Aeronwen takes them all in as she takes the floor once more. Standing, Adminios grins, enjoying Aeronwen's apparent discomfort.
They have gathered to hear the verdict of the council, Your Grace.
Aeronwen gives a single nod. Boudica stands near the bench she occupied earlier. Agro brings Decarius and the boy to sit next to him, opposite Boudica.
Are you prepared now to receive the judgment of your peers, Queen Aeronwen?
Allowing the crowd to settle, Aeronwen takes a moment before she begins.
First, Adminios, I would address this council as a queen. Perhaps for the last time.
Adminios concedes, sitting once more.
My father bequeathed the Iceni lands to Aeronwen and myself. He even carved out a portion for Rome, hoping that this would satiate her appetite. But Rome is a cruel and greedy bitch.
There are murmurs of assent and even encouragement for Aeronwen.
My mother named me Aeronwen, fair carnage. And my father raised me to be his torch for peace. But these two parts are difficult to reconcile, especially when the beasts you swore to keep peace with are violating your sister, scourging your mother, and nailing your flamekeeper up so that they can enjoy watching him die a slow and painful death.
Aeronwen pauses, looking over to Decarius and then to Agro. He gives a small nod.
It is difficult to reconcile anything other than rage and hatred for the men who force themselves inside of you, each one hoping to be the one to see you break. All of them laughing and drinking, betting and belittling you as you lay bleeding on the straw that only the previous day had soaked up the blood of your father.
Cut 2.
Interior Aeronwen's tent at this time. Sabina and Branwen have set up another game. The pair pick up food on the platter next to them. They seem at ease in one another's company. Reacting to an unseen pain, Branwen drops her game piece as her hand flies to cup her belly. Sabina jumps in, concerned, bringing her a cup of water and soothing her as Branwen breathes through the pain. We hear Aeronwen's voice over the top of this scene, and as she continues to address the council.
It is difficult to reconcile peace with those who left Branwen and I to be consumed by flames.
Cut 2.
Interior, the great war tent as before. Aeronwen looks around her. All eyes are on her, and all are with her.
I cannot carry my father's torch of peace to animals who would seek only to stamp it out. I am named for war, for battle, for wreaking havoc with Andraste's fury upon our enemies. And I swear to you, these Roman whoresons will come to rue the day that they chose to dishonor my kin so brutally. Put a sword in my hand. Give me a spear. Give me a fucking spoon and point me at this enemy, the enemy of all of us. And you have my word. I will fight. I will fight until the light fades from my eyes and my soul departs my body, and I have spilt every last drop of blood that this skin has to offer. No sweeter libation for the great Andraste. I do not fear death.
Aeronwen looks pointedly at Adminios.
Condemn me to death if you wish, and take my life. The queen who claimed an enemy, a Roman woman, as her slave, as is my right. The queen who in her haste slew a prince and ally. This was my mistake.
A mistake?
A mistake that I must carry with me for the rest of my life, however long or short that may be. But it is not the first I have made, nor will it be the last. Andilikos is not the only death my conscience has to bear. Place me in the fighting circles without a weapon and pit me against 7 warriors, if you will. Set me against the finest of your champions, or spill the blood from my veins with the druid's dagger. That is your choice. That is your right.
Adminios moves uncomfortably, preparing to speak. Aeronwen holds up her hand.
But what would be the result? More of our people lost.
Cut 2.
Exterior, the lands beyond Camalodunum, early evening. Extreme long shot. Hundreds of native people flock toward Camalodunum to join the uprising. Again, we hear Aeronwen's voice over the following scenes as she continues to address the council.
And we do have the numbers, so perhaps you think we can afford to throw lives away. And experience, too. I do not believe that this is the case. I do not think you believe that either.
Fade 2.
Exterior, Merla's tent, later that evening. Still holding the boy's hand, Decarius approaches Merla's tent. A pot of stew is cooking over the fire beyond the tent, and the boy's eyes light up as he sees and smells it.
Rome is a many-headed hydra where war is concerned.
Merla greets the pair with a smile and offers the boy a plate, indicating that he may help himself to the food. Decarius nods his thanks to Merla and turns to leave, but she catches hold of his arm, holding up the letter he had dropped earlier, questioningly.
Fortunately, my father made me study the Roman battles of old.
With a slow heaviness, Decarius reaches out to receive the letter, his fingers brushing against Merla's and lingering there. Merla smiles at Decarius and offers him a plate. Instead of leaving, he accepts the plate and pockets the letter.
Their tactics, their formations, the deployment patterns of their infantry and their cavalry.
Cut 2.
Interior, the great war tent as before.
You could condemn me to death, or you could put 80 of your finest warriors under my command. Allow me to train them in the methods that I know will bring these Roman dogs to heel. I love my people, and I will give my life for them. But I do not believe that today is the day that happens.
Aeronwen falls quiet and pulls up a chair to await the council's decision. Immediately, the tent erupts into noise and rowdy discussion. Decarius looks at Aeronwen, caught somewhere between disgust and admiration, respect and disbelief. Boudica looks to her daughter, catching Aeronwen's eye. She beams with pride as the crowd take up a slow chant of Aeronwen's name. Seething, Adminios takes a seat. Terida converses with several council members before standing, smiling, allowing the crowd another round of chanting before she quiets them.
Queen Aeronwen, I think it is fair to say that you have won the voice and the hearts of our united people. You are a young queen, and you have suffered and lost more in these few months than many have in a lifetime. It is the opinion of this council that while your decisions and your reactions may not have been the wisest, they are certainly understandable and forgivable.
Adminios is clearly outraged, but knows that he no longer has the council on his side. He continues to seethe silently.
You are free to leave, Your Grace.
There is a great cheer as Aeronwen stands. She smiles warmly at Terida and waits for the noise to subside somewhat, but still has to raise her voice to be heard.
I thank you, all. I am a young queen. You are correct. This was my first campaign, and I don't mind admitting, unprepared for the horrors that met me at Camalodunum.
Cut 2.
Interior, Aeronwen's tent, later that evening. Aeronwen enters the tent and is surprised to find Branwen asleep on her bed. Sabina is sat on a stool next to her, stroking her hair and keeping a watch over her. Aeronwen's words to the council carry over to the scene.
You say I behaved unwisely. Perhaps this is true.
The concern shows on Aeronwen's face, but Sabina brings her finger to her lips, indicating that she be quiet and let Branwen rest. Sabina moves towards Aeronwen to explain all that has happened.
But my behaviour was as nothing compared to the behaviour of some.
Cut 2.
Interior, the great war tent as before. Terida is uncertain of what Aeronwen is doing.
This is all part of war, Your Grace.
I have been informed several times.
Aeronwen indicates to her mother, silently calling for her to join her. Boudica approaches and stands with her daughter, who holds onto her mother's hand as she continues to speak.
A queen must be everything for all of her people. A sister, a mother, a leader. But I cannot lead an army who would defile women and children and take the lives of innocents and unarmed without cause.
Aeronwen releases her grip on her mother's hand. Boudica turns to face her daughter.
Aeronwen, the cause may not always be clear to you, but it is always...
Please, mother. My soul is already far too heavy. Perhaps it is my youth speaking, but I hope never to grow accustomed to the things I saw.
Boudica stares at her daughter, unable to speak.
What are you saying?
My father named me a queen for peace, his torch of peace, but there will never be peace with Rome. I know that now. I was born to be a warrior. I will lead the charge on the battlefield, and I will fight. By the gods, I will fight. I will certainly fight. But if we are to ignite a flame, we need a torch that burns without remorse. A fire that they tried and failed to extinguish. A woman who rose from the ashes stronger than before. A tried and tested warrior queen.
Aeronwen removes the torque from around her neck.
The handmaid of Andraste.
Cut 2.
Interior Aeronwen's tent later that evening. Sabina and Aeronwen take a seat at opposite ends of the table as they had the day before. Aeronwen draws her dagger and pauses before offering it to Sabina, but this time it is different between them.
And an impossible woman.
Sabina glances at Branwen sleeping on the bed. She takes the dagger and looks at it, then uses it to cut the bread before them. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has changed. Cut 2.
Interior, the great war tent, as before. Aeronwen fastens the torque around Boudica's neck.
My mother. Boudica. Flame of the Iceni.
Immediately the crowd take up the chanting. Boudica, Boudica. Boudica is not certain of what has just happened or how, but she knows instinctively how to be the queen her people expect and need. Aeronwen nods and bends the knee, kissing her mother's hand. Boudica raises her daughter to stand once more and embraces her. Agro finds Aeronwen's eyes. He brings his hand to his chest, saluting to her once again, and noting in that moment that Aeronwen looks more at peace than she has been in months. Around them the crowd continue to chant Boudica's name. The chanting echoes into the following scene. Cut 2.
Interior Aeronwen's tent later that evening. Aeronwen and Sabina sit at ease, eating a meal together. Both reach for the jug of wine at the same time. Their hands meet on the neck of the jug, and they regard one another for a moment. Neither of them removes their hand, but this time it is not a battle of wills. First Aeronwen and then Sabina look to where their hands have met, almost in unison. Their fingers come to interlock. Their eyes meet and are absent of any defiance or hatred, judgment or condemnation. Their eyes meet, and for the first time they are truly open. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has changed. Fade to black. The end.
Yay! Thank you, guys. Well done. Well done, everybody. So that was that. That's the end. I know. That's how does everybody feel after that? You can feel free to unmute your mics if you want to.
That's only the end of season 1, though, right? There's going to be more.
Yes. There is
One of 12 seasons.
Yeah, because like Boudica's only just taken over the army now, so
Yeah, I've got men to lead.
yeah, got an army.
There's a lot to do.
Brilliant. Oh no, thank you. Thank you for that. That final read there. But also, oh my gosh, just thank you for this whole read through season, guys. It's been amazing to hear it come to life. So yeah, I can't thank you enough, really. And everybody who's tuned in and listened and followed and like fed back to us, that's been great. Sort of like having that feedback and listening to people who they are sort of like rooting for character wise, or whether there was someone that they disliked and then the character changed and grew on them and stuff like that. So that's been really nice. So yes, I will get to work on season 2. And thank you very, very much, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye for now.
Goodbye for now. Yeah.